Gaeilge Weekly is brought to you by Learn Irish Online. For way more shows, videos, podcasts, and courses for learning the language, head to learnirishonline.com or patreon.com/learnirishonline.
You've been the best of times, you walk me through my darkest days. Why must I turn around? I ask myself. This just ain't fair, so hard to bear. I'm not really sure these days. You walk me, you don't
Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome back to Gaeilge Weekly, Fáiltearás chuig Gaeilge Weekly. And very, very happy to say, lán sásta, hurrah. Welcome to episode number 100, Fáilte chuig Againn iver ein chéad. Woohoo! Dulchredza, amazing, unbelievable. I certainly didn't think when I started off, near cheap me, nor hosty me amach. Listen, show I'm not getting emotional, I just genuinely do have something in my throat. They make Ari mohuchanach, just thought Againn actually in law era in a scornach, but genuinely I never really thought we would kind of get this far. Ní cheap me riomh go méachmuid in ann stricu iver ein chéad. Agus, yeah, go méachmuid an shot that we would be here. Although I do remember when I started this, equivalent or hussy me, kind of promising myself or saying to myself, you have to do 100 episodes of the show. Caithi tú céad episode no céad Againn in show Ian. If I think I was thinking 100 versions, so 50 episodes, because at the time there was only 2 versions of the podcast Againn. They were Gnáthleagan in show gach every week. So I think my idea was do 50 episodes, 2 versions of each one, and only then decide whether it's worth continuing. Just on sin kinna on few a show, on few leanúint le show, is this worth continuing? And yeah, I discovered pretty quickly, probably after 10 or 15 episodes, yeah, it was. The people were enjoying it and getting some type of use out of it. Hug my fitzard, thresh bit dead, no cuig episode jig. Yeah, growth, daoine buint tarva ass that they're benefiting from it. Girl, they buint tatnavas. They were enjoying it, for some people at least, reach daoine arenos. So I guess because of that, I'm lucky that I didn't have to wait all the way until 50 or 100 episodes and kind of force myself to go through it without anybody listening. Because ilach a chur féin hon yeno gan ein den éisteacht go the episode iver chuig episode iver seachtó episode iver céad mar hampla. But yeah, so cool and crazy, to be honest. Crachalsa amach, man, it's crazy. Hon bheith an so Againn iver ein chéad. And just thank you very much for listening. Even if this is your first time listening, few most rudé goil se shol mar the chéadúir ag éisteacht leis an show, or if you've listened to every single episode, mata gach episode, clusta ad, just a big thank you, mille buchas for supporting the show, as of ag taku leis an show, but also for allowing me to be, I suppose, a small part of your weekly life, ag liganstom a bheith mar chuid bheog to the hail. Agus the hail seachtanúil. So I'm very, very grateful for that. And yeah, I really hope you're still enjoying the podcast. I really hope you get something out of it. Like I say, agus tásúlam go bhhain tú rud éigean as budcréile, agus go mín tú buint tatnavas, and that you are able to understand Irish a bit better because of it. Goil tú ná na Gaeilge a hiscin spiúganí níos fearr mar gheallar, and also I guess more nentin that you enjoy it and you enjoy the things I'm talking about, and you feel comfortable listening to me and my random thoughts or boring stories, na smuinty randomcha agus na scéalta le dránacha atá agam. I know some episodes can just be me chatting about what I did at the weekend. Tá sam neart in the episode just been me glart sweet cad rinne ag an tíir seachtana, but hopefully some people still get something out of that lecuna say fine. Reinsteini rud éigean as sin arenos. So yeah, today I want to talk a little bit, I suppose, about the history of Gaeilge Weekly, how Gaeilge Weekly started, and my main memories from us from the 100 episodes. I mean, it's 270 recordings I think I've put out. Arthur Gachéad is a seachtó tafid atá curtha amach agam between, the main episodes and then the Ní Simplí, and then over the last 30 or 40 episodes we've had the Ní Simplí. So na Gnáthleagan an sin na leanúinte níos simplí ó beidir episód iwwer 60 nó 65 since episode number 70 or 65. Tá legan dhaoine Againn. We have the bilingual version, the BHFAD Níos Simplí version. Bonus episodes on Patreon, so Hagarani Savresh Hall Patreon and one-off specials, New Year's Eve specials or whatever, Christmas specials. So yeah, hard there gachéid sa seasca, gachéid sa seachto leaganacha, ceapan chur amach Againn go dtí seo 260 or 270 versions put out until now, and plenty more to come in the future. No plans to stop. Although before I forget, there won't be any Gaeilge Weekly next week. Riv a dhéanam Dermot ní bhain Gaeilge Weekly on Sachtan. So Hugan, going to take a week break since we've now got to 100, and we'll be back on the 18th by Mizrash here on Uchtú to be Mehiv. Just before I forget to say that, and in case people don't listen to the end, Atis not mean Dini éisteacht go zera on Fud Creila on Sachtan show. But I suppose going back to how it started, I know I was speaking on an episode, Cunasahasi Learn Irish Online, Arthur Viohin, around a month ago, speaking on the episode about how Learn Irish Online started. So it's definitely speaking a little bit about how Gaeilge Weekly started in that Kinsa Graume Iglawart Bugnin Fui King Hui Ahasi Gaeilge Weekly sin episode Shin. But to go into a bit more detail, because I don't think I spoke about it much, on Nismo Sunry or Hort Jeeve, Mar Nichapan Graume. Eglawart on the marker for really. I suppose the idea started when I set up Learn Irish Online in March or February 2023. I think the 28th February or 1st of March 2023. Hartar Tuchtú Lá is fihe to be fiara no bidger on Chéad Lá mi morta. Gavila is fed 3. I had made this beginner's course for people who wanted to learn. Vi an bun course so Déanta lahi thosaitheoirí lahi fólamóirí. And I didn't really have anywhere to put it. I didn't want to put it on Udemy or any of these course sites. The mBéarla or Udemy, no. Nasivan show these sites where you can sell courses and it will turn on coursey a yield. Because for me, I just looked at them and thought, you know, they're taking a big commission. They can change their course or your course. Tashid nan the course cabhrú, tashid togal nyart and arrogance freshen. And if they don't like something in the course, they can tell you, no, you can't do it. Muna dhaoine rudagan sa chórsa, lo toshi danan raw lat, no, kahidu e shena cabhrú, you have to change that. And I said, wouldn't it be cool to do my own thing and be able to do the branding and the full website and whatever. But I only had this course. That's all Learn Irish Online was. It was just a course, and that was it. Niro aun a chórsa. Agus niro ein rodella. So once I had the kind of website set up and the brands, the name, you know, on Tanam, agus an branda, agus on Ceisteanna, the website, I kind of looked and thought, well, this is a great chance now if I want to do one or two other things, you know, rud na goella in terms of content. Beidir cúpla fiche on or YouTube, a few videos on YouTube, maybe even a podcast, a few beidir podcréile a hosu, because I'd been thinking for a year or two before that about starting a podcast, not in Irish actually. Vi make smuinu fui podcréile a hosu le blin o cho anús ní as Gaeilge actually just mBéarla as a kind of side project, and I wanted to kind of interview different people, and I'm still thinking of doing that actually in the future. At some point over the next 2 years I will get around to that hopefully. Le cúna dé ag buinte éigen tá mé chun fiú sin agus tá mé an podcréile a hosu mBéarla, but I'm just not sure when because I'm quite busy with everything else in my life at the moment. I'm in soch no hook le gachar della in a hail for láthir, but that will definitely be coming outside of Learn Irish Online in the future. Tíh mu to Learn Irish Online by sin ag tacht sa tauchi gan out. But I guess I thought to myself after, you know, teaching for a year, wouldn't it be nice to do more things outside the teaching and just use it as a way to promote the courses? I mean, I don't know how much sense that made. Níl sam, you know, kivid keel big bunch lashin, because the only course I had was a beginner's course, and the course a viam na bun course Gaeilge lahi thosaitheoirí. And well, sure, if you're making content for people learning Irish, they probably already have, or the content I was making, the first few videos I put out on YouTube and stuff, it was already kind of stuff. It's stuff for people who already had a good amount of Irish, you know, ruddy agus content lahi daoine a bhí neart Gaeilge, no piece of Gaeilge acu hana féin already. So I'm not sure how much sense there was with that. Níl sam cévid cíl a bhí le sin. I'm not sure really was I thinking it through, but I said, listen, I didn't, and I still, to be honest, to this day, don't see too many channels on YouTube or too many Instagram pages helping people learn Irish in terms of ones that stick around. You see ones pop up for a few months, then they disappear. So fecinn tú cín ar fra beidir cúpla mí agus an sin bíonn siad imithe arís. So I said, wouldn't it be cool to set one up? I didn't have an Instagram page or anything at the time, so I didn't get going on Instagram and learn Irish online until much later. Near husí mé ar Instagram le LIO. Could say beidir séhí iníos sin nó bliain amháin iníos sin, kind of 6 months or a year after that. But anyway, at the time to start actually making some progress with the story, chun buchtaín dul chun cín a dhéanamh leis an scéal seo. I'd been teaching, for a year or two at that point, and I was sometimes talking to my students about, are you listening to stuff during the week? Because in this class you had lots of conversation, but do you have chances to practice other stuff apart from your speaking? And was chance ad chun clachtú dhéanamh rudí eile, seachas just the scileanna labhartha. So apart from your speaking or spoken skills. And they would say, yeah, listen, like I try to listen to stuff, but it's just so difficult because they were tuning in to Radio Gaeilge, TG Cahir, at least TG Cahir, you have the subtitles, but then turn off the subtitles, you're probably in trouble. If you're a learner, muna bhfuil na full headset, agus chance ma go bhfuil tú a driblóidí, mar fólamór, well, it depends on your level, brahan say, the level, but for a lot of people there will be, especially when native speakers are chatting, gohoirithe nóir atá country dúchasacha ag labhairt. So I thought, well, is there any podcast? And I kind of looked, there wasn't many. There's one or two, like Nuacht Wall, which is still going. So we can look ógsa le Nuacht Wall atá fós ar an bhód. That's still on the scene. But apart from that, there wasn't that many that I thought this is kind of suitable for learners. And also, I found so many of the podcasts were speaking about stuff that probably wasn't too interesting for a lot of people. Especially, a lot of the Radio Gaeilge stuff, and I don't mean that in a Radio Gaeilge is made mainly for people who are living in the Gaeilge, so it's natural that they're going to be talking about stuff going on in the Gaeilge and local news, nuacht dáitsúil agus rudí arsúil na Gaeilge. But I thought if you're a young person, you don't live in the Gaeilge, like most people learning Irish aren't, chuid modes and the dhaoine ag fólam na Gaeilge and níl siad ina gcónaí so Gaeilge. Well, wouldn't it be more interesting to hear about TV, sport, travel, being Irish living abroad, the weather, even whatever, an aimsir, an television, sport, a bheith éarnach ilachónaí thar lear, and different things like that. So I thought, wouldn't it be cool to do something like that, just kind of chatting about normal things, and especially kind of for young people. I mean, this podcast isn't targeted at anyone specifically, Irish learners obviously, but apart from that, full more in the Gaeilge gach seach sin, it's not made for people in specific age groups, but a lot of people who listen would be in between the age of, let's say, 18 and 40, around that. It's your Uchtag, agus Carca, but I know we have a lot of listeners who are older than that as well, listeners who are in their 70s or probably even 80s, in the Seachtóidí, in the Uchttóidí. So it's good that it kind of covers a lot of different age ranges, being a lot daoine ag a lot eistna difriúla ag éisteacht leis an show. But I suppose because I'm 24, turning 25 this week, fiche cahar cosú fiche cuaig an teacht an show on Friday, ar an ina, I speak about stuff that's important in my life and stuff that I enjoy, or just stuff I'm interested in, rudí ó bhfuil sim agam montú, and rudí tá tábhachtach domsa. And because of that, I guess a lot of people my age, or roughly my age, enjoy kind of, well, I hope they enjoy, the things that I'm talking about. So maybe because of that, we have a lot more younger listeners. Tá bhád níos mó beidir éisteacht óga, Againn, again, in comparison to some other Irish language podcasts. But there is loads of good Irish language podcasts out there. But again, if you're learning, it's a bit trickier. And that was the idea with the Ní Simplí version. And still to this day, the Ní Simplí and the Bhád Ní Simplí versions. Fós, an lá tá neathain. Na leagan go Bhád Ní Simplí agus Ní Simplí, they get a lot more listeners than the full version. Being the Bhád Níos mó éistearí acu ná an leagan omláin, an Gnáthleagan den fud Gaeilge. So I started doing that. I remember the first day I recorded, how nervous I was. Is cuireann an chéad lá ar rinne mé taifeadú ar an bud Gaeilge céach nervíiseach agus a bhí mé, which is crazy because it wasn't going out live. Ní raibh sé dul amach bio. Obviously, I could have done it 20 times before I decided, okay, that's it. I'm going to put it out like that. Bhí an chance agam dhéanamh fiche óir, nó níos mó, before saying, riv ará, okay, tá mé chun é seo a dhéanamh tá an cean seán legan seo a chur amach. I'm going to release this version. And I got to edit this as much as possible, done the audio on it, bhí an seans an editing an a go thuirt a dhéanamh air. Agus gachar the ahrú leis and change everything about it, riv a chur amach before putting it out. But yes, my voice, when I started recording the first time, now you don't hear this probably, well, maybe you do hear this on the first episode. I've not gone back and listened to it, or I've only listened to maybe 20 or 30 seconds of it before. I do not want to listen to it ní mé géirí éisteacht leis, because I'm sure the audio is terrible. I'm sure I have no confidence when I'm speaking. Tá mé cinnte nach raibh muoine agam agus mise ag labhairt. But I remember the first few takes I did that didn't go out, obviously, in the end, okay, the chúpla take a rud me, agus ní aici siad amach sa deara. My voice was shaking. Bhí mo go ag cri, which is crazy, again, when you're alone in your room. And I just hadn't done anything like that before, and I wasn't as confident. Of course, I had no experience speaking in front of camera in the Againn. Well, I suppose the bun course I did, but not much. And even I go back and watch the beginner's course, which is the first time I ever spoke in front of camera and presented something. I think, geez, I don't look that confident, Neil. More in winning agam, and I'm pausing a lot. And I can see, because I know myself well enough, Marial goil athna wa, I'll go more in pain. I can look at myself and say, oh, I was clearly nervous at that point, or certain tics or mannerisms I had. A couple of tics, no. It's the mannerisms of the album. I'm like, oh, I was pausing there because I couldn't think of what to say next, If you make sloppu on sin, mar if you make swino, ni raume and on swino, we can't be cartum raw, what I should say, mar on chéad rodella as the next thing. And I remember even the first, I went back and checked this yesterday, actually, while I was recording I think the Ní Simplí version, Hu mé rash agus mise ag tafadú an legan Ní Simplí in ye. And actually, the plan I had at first, I'm planning to be reduce when I started the podcast back in April 2023, near Husime in my Eibron Gobbits Fit 3, was to put the full version out on Tuesday and the Ní Simplí version out on Wednesday. And that's actually what I did the first week. Sin cad a rinne on Ceisteanna. I still can't remember why I changed that for the second week, but I'm happy it did. I think it makes more sense to have all versions going out at the same time. Chun Gnáthleagan a bheith ag dul amach ag an ann chéanna. And yeah, 25th of April 2023, I think, on Chúgal Law is fihead a bhí Eibron, Gáhíle is a bheith 3 on Chéad Agron to Gaeilge Weekly, the first episode of Gaeilge Weekly on the 26th. The Ní Simplí version came out tháinig an legan Ní Simplí amach an sin an lá dar giom the J after. And guns out, without doubt, definitely the versions now are a lot better than the first few. The audio is better, my own confidence, my own speaking is better. Everything, I think, is a lot better now. And probably I'll look back someday, chance Malcolm might make fake and sear like at episode 100 and saying, oh, I wasn't that good then, and I'm going to get much better in the future in my production, my editing, my speaking. Mas gona lawartha agus ma chuid agurthireachta, my editing agus gacrad on audio, but sure what needs to on film at the sound. So let's see, but that's, I think, always how it is. Yours, well, I'm quite self-critical, and I think a lot of people who make stuff like this are in general a lot of daoine dhéanann rudaí so lei seo tá siad an his critical orthúb féin. So kind of critical on themselves, especially when looking back at previous stuff they've made, fake and sear ruddy. I thought Déanta acu briv, and that's a good thing in a way. Okay, maybe you don't get the same amount of contentment out of what you do, but you're winning to on made sunna céanna as na ruddy a dhéanann tú, but you do things to a very high standard then, or you try to do things to a high standard, you push yourself to make things better, churn tú brew earth féin hun ruddy a dhéanú níos fearr. And that's how I like to do things, but I suppose sometimes it can be a bit frustrating as well, because you're always thinking how it could be better instead of being appreciative of maybe how it's actually not too bad as it is in áit a bheith buíoch as, okay, níl sé actually róchana agus tá sé níos fearr ná mar bheith sé, it's better than it would be if I was doing X, Y, or Z. So yeah, thinking then of having the guests on, I suppose, in late 2023, early 2024, almost every second week, I had a guest on, being like gach dar Sachtan, the agam and budcrail. And that's something I would like to do again, is have more guests on, hun ní smó íana a bheith agam and budcrail at some points in the future. But for the moment, I'm enjoying it, just chatting by myself and kind of getting better at that and kind of filling a podcast from myself and ag líonú pudcar lumlán just mise ag labhairt Gnáthleagan and ella. But I would like to start interviewing people again at some points before the end of the year, maybe the start of next year, if they're in the blian, a few bidger túsna bliana gábhíle is a bheithe sé, because that is something I enjoy doing. As I said, I want to start the podcast in English doing it at some point to make géirí podcréile a hosú a mBéarla ag pointe aigen agus é sin a dhéanú, outside of learnirishonline, tí muite LIO. And yeah, just, I suppose 6 or 7 months ago, around October, November last year, my year over me na sauna and I was struggling with my motivation for Gaeilge Weekly. Vi me extracos Bígí le mo chuid spragu. Like Gaeilge Weekly, I just kind of felt like I wasn't enjoying sitting down on Monday and Tuesday recording the podcast. Ní ra méid punt taithniv a sí síos an luúin agus an mórts ag tafaú an fud craile, but now I'm in a much happier place in terms of the podcast. Tá mé an lot to wadní sásta module leis an bud craile, and I'm really enjoying, and it's one of my favourite parts of the week is sitting down and recording the podcast on Monday or Tuesday. I was recorded the first two versions on Monday, and then this version, the wadní simplí, on Tuesday. Gcónaí déanam an Céadaoin den fud craile an luúin agus an sin an legan seo an legan I wadní simplí on March. And I think the wadní simplí has been a good idea. I think smuoine ma a bhí ann agus atá an leis an legan I wadní simplí. So even if you've no Irish at all, you can tune in. If you mun bhfuil aon Gaeilge ad churbe, you can tune in, tá tú an túnál isteach, and you can follow the podcast more or less, tá tú an podcréile a leanúint, because obviously everything is said in English as well. Tá gach rud ráite I mBéarla freisin. So once you have English, which I presume most people listening do, tá súlam go bhfuil béarla an chuid mó nó beidir ag gach duine ag éisteacht. So I think that's helped as well probably grow the podcast over the last year. And the more I can grow it and the more you guys, I suppose, can share it and tell other people about it, the more people who can learn Irish in hopefully more fun and more enjoyable and easier ways. So mat an podcréile ag airí níos mó agus tá sibse ag mulla an podcréile recommending the podcast do chuoine, then more people can learn Irish, tá níos mó daoine an Gaeilge ólam, and hopefully enjoy Irish and learn it in an easier way. Agus níos mó taithniv a bhaint as an Gaeilge ólam agus í ólam I mbealach níos éasca agus níos simplí agus níos spríúla na funner ní focail sin ó more fun way. So yeah, two more things I want to say. One thing I want to say is I'm really grateful to live in a generation tá mé an bhuaich chun a bheith markdal in Luna, in which if you have an idea like a podcast or music or whatever, you can just buy a microphone, tá tú an mic a cheannach, and or whatever the piece of equipment is and piece of travel. Of course, for some industries it's more expensive, or for some things it's more expensive, but for something like podcasting, for example, I had a laptop ready, I bought a mic and just started it, and it was free to upload on Spotify. Bhí sé siar an aisce chun é a chur agus éasca chun é a chur chun é a úslódal Spotify. It was completely free to do all the promotion through Facebook and Reddit and different places online. Bhí sé gomlan siar an aisce chun an chur chun cín is tóch an promotion a dhéanamh Facebook agus Reddit agus áitina dhearfriúla lína. Imagine like 10 or 15 years ago someone wanting to do this. Saolaí like no cúg bliana te go when duine aigen ag déanúireach nó a géirí rud aigen cosú le seo a dhéanú. You'd have to be with Radio na Gaeilge or TG Cahar or wherever, which are great stations and great organisations. Agurta éintach atá gceist, and they do great stuff in seed rud éintacha, but it's brilliant that nowadays you can do this completely independent and you can do it the way that you want to do. Tá tú an é sa bhealach a bhfuil tú a géirí. Just put up a post on Instagram today, kind of talking a little bit about 100 episodes and thanking people for listening and everything else. Like gáil buíochas le gach dana d'éis leis an podcréiles gach ardella. And I was kind of saying that's for me the coolest thing about Gaeilge Weekly. Sin an beidir an rud is far for Gaeilge Weekly. I've no funding from the government nor do I want any. Ní léon jontas nó ní léon agad agam ón rialtas, and I'm not looking for any, and I'm not giving out about that ní mé tuairteach faoi sin, because I like being independent. Is máthlam a bheith nabsbach and being able to do it in the way that I want to do it. Agus é crothú an podcréile sa chuí ina bhfuil mé i géirí é churthú. So creating the podcast in the way I want to create it and being able to speak about the things that I want to speak about. A bheith ná leabhart faoin na rudaí a bhfuil mé géirí leabhart futhú. And I just think it's so cool. You can just buy a mic, and with the internet nowadays started off, a lot of people, always talk about 20, 30, 40 years ago things were better, but there's a lot of things that are better now than 20 or 30 years ago. Tá lán rudaí tá níos fearr anois ná fiche trocha charcha bliain ó shin. You know, you can talk about whatever, fake news, and how much fake news there is nowadays on mid nuacht breagach atá ann sna leithean the show. But at the same time, isn't it great that anyone who wants to voice their opinion can? You don't need to be employed by Sky News or RTE to give your opinion and give your thoughts out there. You can have a platform like this, or on Casula Show. I get fresh, and for some people anyway. And you know, if you can make it happen in terms of podcasting or music or creating your own website or your own vlog on YouTube or your own channel or whatever, Payrod, Cabérod, atá ann. I just think that's so cool and so blessed. Banithe agus buíoch, grateful to live in a generation where you can do that, and there's so little barriers to entry. There are still a lot of barriers to entry for people, of course, and you know, even something like buying a mic or having a situation where you have the time to do something like this is challenging for a lot of people. Do clonach lai landini, but I think for most people it's easier at least than it would have been 20 years ago. Ceapan lai an chud smó do dhaoine tá sé níos éasca éanos ná mar bheadh sé hart fiche bliain ó shin. So very grateful for that, and I think that's something important to keep in mind, especially when it's, you know, easy to fall into the trap of thinking 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago everything was better. Bhí gach níos fearr de cúg bliain ó shin, fiche trocha bliain ó shin. And the last thing I want to say is just a really, 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 really big thank you. So to my Gary, rá míle buchas le gach deire a d'éis le ein episode de Gaeilge Weekly. Anybody listen to any episode of Gaeilge Weekly, whether if you listen to every single one or this year first, you know, má tá gach ile ceann cloist ad, nó más rud é gúil sé seo mar an chéad ceann atá cloist ad, still, fós míle buchas. Ashin, especially to people who've written in. I always say that's the best part of my job and the nicest part of my job. On chuid is jeise to my first agus on chuid. Yes, fair to my first when people write in with emails or Instagram messages or Facebook messages or whatever, or comments, the refushed Instagram, refushed no the Instagram. And yeah, when people just say, oh, it's helped me, or tell me a bit about their story in terms of learning Irish and finding the podcast, or vintini grog, gur harry on podcréile lo, no gohfuil siad ag fólam na Gaeilge agus beagnaíonn faoin scéal atáú, the story they have in terms of Irish maidir leis an Gaeilge. Even the feedback, negative feedback, the odd time, asholes, people, the main negative feedback people give out about the intro and outro song. Fair enough, that's no problem. I might change it in the future, but I know some people like it. That's like good that but still, if people are taking the time into write, even if very, very rarely, but maybe once or twice, it's negative stuff, that's absolutely fine as well. I appreciate people taking in the time to write. So yeah, just thank you so much. Thank you so much for being a part of my life, and for, as I said, letting me be a small part of your life. You know, gohfuil siftaréis liganstom a bheith mar chuid bheog do or hail agus or sail gom leisca. And I think that's yeah, just really nice. And you know, even for me, just getting the chance to sit down for half an hour and just chat about things, whatever it might be, whether it's something serious or something funny, you know, fiú mas rud dhaoine a town, no rud níos speisialta, something more fun. It's such a privilege to be able to just kind of sit down for half an hour, speak in Irish here in the south of Spain, in éisteacht in Spain. Again, to be living this generation where I can broadcast it out to different places around the world through Spotify. You know, tá mé an chréilú amach gát in zifriúla timppla down le Spotify and Apple Podcasts and everything else, Apple Podcasts agus gachar deile. And to look at the list of countries that have listened, I think over 126 countries or something, har there céad is a fiche sé tír agus íseo. And I think there's been people in wherever, South Korea or Mexico or South Africa, you know, an Africas, agus an Chréas, agus Mexico, ag éisteacht leis an budcréile. I'm sure there's a few dodgy VPNs in there as well that make it look better than it is. Beidir gohfuil cúpla VPNs is sin agus mBéarla sin tá cuma bhfuil níos mó tíortha ag éisteacht leis an show. I don't know, níl sam. But it's just so cool for me to be able to record it here, just chat away about stuff that's important to me every Monday, and that you guys listen to it. And I really, really appreciate, again, you guys let me into your life for half an hour every week. Tá mé fear week. Go mín sibh ag liganstom a bheith mar chuid bheog do sail. gach seachtain. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Gaeilge Weekly will continue. As I said, there'll be no episode next week. Ní bhaid an episode on seachtain sa hugan. But after that, on the 18th, on Tucht the Lord's Egg, we will be back by Ms. Rash, and we'll continue on for the foreseeable future by Ms. Leanúint Snail. Plan na Againn. Hun stopu. We've no plans to stop. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much for listening today and over the last 2 years. It's such a privilege to speak to you guys every week. It's more an privilege. A dumsa hun lauert live gach seachtain, and I look forward to hopefully continuing to do so. They'll make sulgamore le leanúint le sin le cúnaé. A big thank you. Enjoy your week, enjoy your weekend. Buin taitnamh as we're seachtain, agus we're jar seachtainna. And I'll speak to you guys in 2 weeks. Le rom I live again caiiciis. Goodbye and God bless. Slán agus bannacht.